I never thought a piece of paper could rip a man's soul apart, never imagined that a simple envelope from the clinic could become the crack that split open everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust, but that's exactly what happened to me on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, just 2 weeks after my wife had proudly placed her latest ultrasound on the fridge like a trophy. I remember it so clearly. The sky was gray, the lawn still damp from the morning drizzle, and I had just limped my way down the driveway to grab the mail, my right leg still stiff from the surgery I had back in July, the scar under my jeans pulsing every time I moved wrong. I flipped through the stack of envelopes absently, bills, ads, a coupon booklet, and then I saw it. A white envelope from the Lakeside Women's Clinic, with my wife's name typed neatly on the front. No big deal, we'd been going there every few weeks, checking on the baby, planning for what was supposed to be our miracle, our second chance after a year of fighting and therapy and near divorce. So yeah, I wasn't suspicious at first, not until I caught the edge of the paper inside and my fingers itched to know what was in there. Maybe I shouldn't have opened it, maybe I crossed a line, but something felt off, and I've learned to trust that gut feeling, even when it whispers things I don't want to hear. So I peeled the flap open, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a single page, typed in that cold medical language that somehow makes even miracles sound like appointments and procedures, and my eyes scanned the words, searching for the part that said whether we were having a boy or a girl, until they stopped. Gestational age, 18 weeks. Date of estimation, September 3rd. My breath caught in my throat, a strange ringing buzzed in my ears as the date settled into my memory like a hammer crashing through glass, because on September 3 RD. I wasn't home, I wasn't with her, I was lying in a hospital bed, drugged out on morphine, waiting for a second surgery after the first one left complications in my leg. I was hooked up to machines, barely conscious. And she was apparently making a baby. I stood there in the driveway, envelope shaking in my hands, the rain starting to fall again, soaking the edge of the paper, and for a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think straight. I told myself there had to be a mistake, that I misread it, that the dates didn't mean what I thought they meant, but deep down, in the marrow of my bones, I already knew the truth. The baby isn't mine. I didn't go inside right away. I stood there in the rain, replaying the last few months in my head like a movie with scenes I suddenly needed to rewatch. Her extra long grocery trips, the way she'd started sleeping with her phone under her pillow, her sudden softness after weeks of distance, the way she cried when she told me she was pregnant, as if it were a burden instead of a blessing, and the worst part, the part that turned my stomach inside out. I remembered thinking she was finally falling back in love with me. When I finally walked inside, I didn't say a word. I slid the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into my back pocket. I watched her from the kitchen as she stirred pasta at the stove, humming softly, smiling when she saw me, and I felt sick, because she looked happy, like she was proud of the lie she was living. I had two choices: confront her then and there, or wait, find out everything first, and make sure I wasn't walking into a storm without an umbrella. I chose the second, not because I was calm, but because my rage needed answers. That night I barely slept. I just laid there beside her, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering if she ever felt guilty, if she ever looked at me and saw them and she broke, or if she'd convinced herself it was justified somehow. And as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, a single question burned hotter than the rest. Who did she sleep with? Who is the father of the child she carries like a badge of honor? And how could she look me in the eyes every day and let me believe it was mine? I started digging the next day, quietly, methodically, like a man hunting for a ghost. I went through her phone when she was in the shower, nothing explicit, of course not, but there were deleted messages, phone calls at strange hours, most of them to one number I didn't recognize. So I called it from a burner app. And I froze when the voicemail answered. Hey, this is Daniel, leave a message and I'll get back to you when I can. Daniel Harper. My boss. My goddamn boss. It hit me like a punch in the chest, the kind that knocks the wind out of you and leaves you gasping for air while your brain tries to catch up with what your ears just heard. Daniel was the one who offered to help cover the surgery costs when my insurance fell short. He was the one who visited me at the hospital, who told me to focus on getting better while he'd take care of everything else. I thought he was a friend, a mentor, someone who believed in me. But now I had to ask myself, what the hell did he mean by everything else? I didn't tell her I knew, not yet. I played the role of the clueless husband, the man who brings her breakfast in bed, kisses her growing belly, and asks about baby names. I watched her face, watched for cracks in the performance, but she never flinched, not once, and that's what scared me the most. She was either the best liar I'd ever known, or she'd convinced herself it wasn't a lie at all. 3 days later, I cornered Daniel in his office, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. He smiled when he saw me, offered me a drink like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't slept with my wife while I was in a hospital bed fighting off infections and nightmares. I didn't take the drink, I just stared him down and said 5 words I'd never thought I'd say out loud. "Is the baby yours, Daniel?" He froze, his smile dropped, and that was all the answer I needed, but he didn't deny it, didn't stutter or backpedal. He just looked at me with something that almost resembled pity and said, "She did it to save you." And in that moment, something in me shattered so loudly I swear I heard it echo in the room. I turned and walked out without another word, because I didn't know if I was going to punch him or break down in front of him, and either way, I wasn't ready. But I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because if they thought I was just going to accept this, to raise another man's child, to swallow this betrayal like some bitter pill and move on like nothing happened, they didn't know me at all. I was going to get the truth, the whole truth, and when I did, I'd make sure neither of them ever forgot what they did to me. I couldn't get his voice out of my head. She did it to save you. As if that was supposed to make it all okay. As if betrayal wrapped in sacrifice made it something noble. As if the weight of that choice could be carried without breaking both of us in the process. I drove around for 2 hours after leaving Daniel's office. No destination, no direction, just the need to move. The city blurred past my window, the world continuing like nothing had changed. While my life had split in two, one half before that envelope, and one half after. I pulled into an empty parking lot behind a gas station and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles white, my jaw clenched, my heart refusing to slow down. I thought about calling her right then, about screaming every word I had stored up inside me. But I didn't want a phone call. No, I needed to see her face when I said it. I needed to watch the truth sink into her eyes. I needed to hear what kind of story she would try to tell me. When I finally walked through the front door, it was quiet. The house smelled like her lavender candles, dinner already cooking in the oven. She was in the nursery, painting one of the walls a soft yellow. She looked back at me with a smile so warm it nearly melted the fury in my chest. Almost. "Hey," she said, wiping a bit of paint off her cheek. "How was work?" It took everything in me not to explode right then. But instead I leaned against the doorframe and asked, as casually as I could fake it. "Did you ever feel guilty?" She blinked, confused. "Guilty about what?" I nodded toward her belly. "About lying to me." I watched her face, watched how fast the color drained from it. Her hand dropped the brush, the silence between us grew teeth, sharp and unforgiving. What are you talking about?" she whispered. But her voice cracked at the end, like she already knew the game was over. "I know," I said quietly. "I know the baby isn't mine." She didn't cry, she didn't collapse or run. She just stood there, stunned, arms limp at her sides. And after a long, aching pause, she whispered. "You were dying, Logan." I felt that. Like a punch to the gut wrapped in silk. Because I knew what she meant. I remembered the fear in the doctor's eyes, the hushed tones in the hallway. The words septic and spread and life-threatening tossed around like darts against a board. "I needed help," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't know what else to do, we couldn't afford the second surgery, and the insurance had maxed out. Daniel offered to cover it but he wanted something in return." My stomach churned. "He made you do it?" She looked away, ashamed. "No, not exactly. He didn't say it outright. He just implied it. Said there were ways he could help, said he was lonely, said if I cared enough about you I'd understand what he meant." I wanted to scream. Wanted to break something. Because now I didn't just hate her, I hated him with a fire I didn't know I was capable of. That man looked me in the eyes, shook my hand, told me to rest easy while he was sleeping with my wife. And she let him. "You could have told me," I said bitterly. "You could have told me the truth. We could have figured something else out, anything else, hell, I would have rather died than live with this." She walked toward me slowly, tears finally welling up in her eyes. "But I didn't want to lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was saving your life. And then it happened, and I hated myself, and then I found out I was pregnant and I didn't know if it was yours or his. Anne. You still don't know." I cut in. She shook her head. I didn't want to find out. I wanted to believe it was yours. But it's not, I said flatly. Because I did the math. You were pregnant before I was even discharged. I was in the hospital for another 10 days. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing now. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Logan. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. That was the part that haunted me most. She really believed that. She believed her betrayal was a form of love. A twisted sacrifice born from desperation and fear and 1,000 bad choices made in the shadow of crisis. I left that night. I didn't say where I was going, I just grabbed my keys and left. I slept in my car, under a bridge near the river, the hum of traffic above me like white noise for my grief. I didn't sleep much, I couldn't stop seeing them, imagining what it looked like, how it felt. All the details my brain couldn't help but fill in, even when I begged it not to. The next day I went back to the hospital, to the billing department. I needed to see the receipts, the payments, the paperwork. I needed proof, needed it like oxygen. Sure enough, there it was, Daniel Harper, full payment on September 5th. Not just for the surgery but for a private room, extended care, top-tier post-op treatment. He didn't just help me survive. He bought my survival. And now I owed him my life. While he stole my family. I didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know how to carry it without crumbling. But one thing became clear, this wasn't over. Daniel thought he could buy silence, thought he could own people like pawns on a chessboard. But he underestimated me. So I started planning. I dug into his life the same way I had into my wife's, quietly, carefully, methodically. I found the cracks, and there were more than a few. Shady investments, NDAs signed by past employees, a private apartment leased under a fake name downtown. It was all there. And I was going to burn it all down. But first, I needed one more thing. I needed to know for certain, no questions, no maybes. I needed a paternity test. And this time, I wouldn't be asking permission. It's strange. How something as small as a cotton swab can hold the weight of an entire life. How one tiny moment, barely 10 seconds, can feel heavier than a year of marriage. But that's exactly what it felt like when I slid the DNA kit into the envelope, sealed it, and dropped it off at the lab. I didn't tell her. I didn't ask her permission. I didn't say a word about it. Because I didn't owe her explanations anymore. Not after everything. I had taken a sample from the inside of her toothbrush. The one she used every morning, humming to herself like our world wasn't cracking beneath her feet. And from that little piece of plastic, I was going to find out if the baby she was carrying had my blood, or his. The woman at the lab counter smiled too politely. Said results would take 5 to 7 business days. 5 to 7 days felt like a lifetime when you're standing on the edge of something this permanent. But I nodded and left. Because what else was I supposed to do? The house was colder when I got back. Not physically, emotionally. You know how silence starts to feel heavy, like it's pressing into your ears. That was how it felt every time I looked at her now. We lived together like strangers. Passing each other in the hallway, pretending to eat dinner at the same table while barely speaking. The only time she said anything more than a sentence was when she asked if I'd found somewhere else to stay. I hadn't. I didn't want to leave, not yet, because part of me needed to be here when the truth came in. I needed to watch her face when I told her. I needed to see what was left of her mask when the last layer peeled away. She tried a few times to talk. Once I walked in and she was sitting on the bed holding a photo of us. It was from our wedding day. She looked happy, glowing. I looked young, stupid. Full of hope and empty of wisdom. I never stopped loving you, she said quietly, not looking up from the photo. I still don't know how it all went so wrong. I didn't respond. Because love is a verb. And her actions screamed louder than anything her lips could whisper. Instead, I left the room and went back to my research. Daniel Harper, CEO, philanthropist, family man, or so the press said. But I'd started pulling threads. And the more I pulled, the more the illusion unraveled. He had a string of ex-assistants who never lasted more than 6 months. 2 of them had lawsuits that magically disappeared under private settlements. There was one in particular, Jenna Riley, who'd vanished from every platform. No Instagram, no LinkedIn, no trace after 2021. I reached out to an old college friend who now worked in digital forensics. Asked him to help me find her, told him it was urgent. He owed me one. We used to room together back when I was scraping by on scholarships and coffee. 3 days later, I got an encrypted file in my inbox. An address, a new name, and a note: she's hiding for a reason. Don't screw this up. So I drove. It was a small town about 3 hours north, quiet, nothing special. I found her in a bookstore, mid-30s, plain clothes, hair dyed darker. She didn't recognize me at first, but when I said, "Daniel Harper," she froze. Like I'd said the name of a ghost she thought she'd buried long ago. We talked in the alley behind the shop. She didn't want to go anywhere public, didn't want her name recorded on a receipt or a camera. She looked over her shoulder twice during our conversation. And when she finally started talking, her voice was shaking. "He ruins people," she said. "He doesn't scream or threaten, he manipulates. He makes you think you owe him, makes you feel like you're lucky he even sees you." She told me things I didn't want to believe. Things that made my stomach turn. Stories of after-hours meetings, inappropriate comments disguised as compliments. A hand on her lower back that lingered too long. A weekend retreat where she woke up in a hotel room with no memory of the night before and a NDA waiting on the table next to her phone. "He buys silence," she whispered. "And if you don't take the deal, he destroys you." I asked if she'd testify. She laughed, short, bitter. "No one touches Daniel Harper," she said. "But maybe you'll be the one to prove me wrong." I left that town with more than just a story, I left with purpose. Because now I knew I wasn't just a man who got cheated on. I was one of many who got used, played, discarded. But I could be the first to push back. The DNA results came in the next morning. I sat on the porch, the envelope in my hand, just staring at it for a long time. Funny how something so small can feel like a bomb. Eventually, I opened it. 0% probability of paternity. Not mine. Never was. Everything I feared, confirmed in cold, clinical language. My blood didn't run through that child. Daniel Harper's did. I walked inside. She was in the kitchen, folding baby clothes she'd just pulled from the dryer. Smiling to herself like she was building a future that hadn't already crumbled beneath her. I laid the paper on the table between us. She looked down, saw the header, and her lips parted but no sound came out. "You lied to me," I said, softly. "For months, you let me believe I had a future. A family. A son." Her hands trembled as she picked up the page, her eyes scanning it. "No," she whispered, "no, this can't be." "It is," I cut her off. "And now you're going to tell me everything. All of it. No more pieces." She sank into the chair across from me like her legs had given out. And for the first time in this entire mess, I saw real fear in her eyes. "He told me he'd let you die," she said after a long pause. "That if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd pull the funding, let the infection spread." I didn't know what else to do, Logan, I swear to God, I didn't know. I believed her. But that didn't make it better. It made it worse. Because now I didn't just see betrayal, I saw blackmail, coercion, a man playing God with people's lives. And I wasn't going to let it go. I wasn't going to raise Daniel Harper's child. I wasn't going to stay in a house built on guilt. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let him keep doing this to other people. So I stood. And I said 5 words that finally made her break. "I'm taking him down next." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't. Because I knew that if I closed my eyes, I'd see his face. Smirking behind some boardroom desk. Wearing that expensive suit he bought with dirty money. Sitting on top of a corporate empire built on secrets, silence, and women like my wife. I stared at the ceiling. Listening to the sound of the house, our house. Her soft crying in the next room, muffled behind a door she didn't dare open. I could have gone in. Could have told her I understood. That I forgave her. But I didn't. Because it wasn't time for forgiveness. Not yet. Not until the man who put her on her knees was brought to his. The next morning, I drove to my old job. Security guard at the main office recognized me right away. "Logan. I thought you were still on medical leave, man. Good to see you on your feet." I smiled, shook his hand. "Yeah, just needed to stop by, clear out a few personal things." He waved me in. Didn't even check my name on the list. Just like that, I was in. The place hadn't changed. Same fake plants, same overly bright lighting. Same plastic smiles from people who didn't care about each other beyond deadlines and promotions. I walked past reception, past the break room, all the way to the executive floor. His office was on the top, of course, floor-to-ceiling windows, leather furniture, abstract art that screamed, money but no taste. And he was in there, laughing with someone on the phone, like he didn't have a damn care in the world. I stood at the glass for a full minute before knocking once. He looked up, paused, then motioned for me to come in. "Logan," he said smoothly, as if we were old friends reconnecting. "I didn't expect to see you so soon. How's recovery?" I closed the door behind me, didn't sit. "Fine. I'm walking. Breathing. Processing." He leaned back, arms folded. "Good to hear it. You know, when I paid for that operation, I told them, do whatever it takes to get him back on his feet." My jaw tightened. "Oh, I know what you paid for, Daniel. And I know exactly what it took." His face flickered then, just for a second, a crack in the mask. "You've been busy," he said slowly, his voice more cautious now. "I take it this isn't a thank you visit." I pulled the manila envelope from my coat pocket. Laid it on his desk, right next to that polished silver pen he probably used to sign settlements. "DNA results," I said. "You're the father." His smile faltered completely this time. Hands went still, eyes narrowing just slightly. "I see." "No denial?" I asked. "What's the point?" he replied coolly. "You came here with answers, not questions." I stepped forward. "You took everything from me, Daniel. My trust. My future. My family. I saved your life." "No," I said sharply, "you bought your way into my wife's body. You didn't save me, you cornered her. You took advantage of a woman who was drowning, and then handed her an anchor." He stood now too, still calm, still collected. "Logan, be careful. You're emotional. You're not thinking this through." "I'm thinking clearer than I ever have," I snapped. "I'm going to expose you. I have everything I need, witnesses, statements, proof." He laughed once, quiet and humorless. "You think I haven't danced this dance before? You're not the first angry husband. You won't be the last. You think anyone's going to care? The media loves me. Investors love me. This will go away." I reached into my other pocket. Pulled out a flash drive, held it between two fingers. "This doesn't go to the media," I said. "It goes to your board. Your shareholders. Your wife." That got him. His lips pressed into a thin line. He looked at the drive like it was a loaded weapon, which, to be fair, it was. "You think you can blackmail me?" "No," I said, stepping closer, voice calm now, like ice. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for an apology. I want a confession. On paper. You resign from the company, publicly admit your misconduct, donate $5 million to a foundation for victims of workplace harassment, and disappear. And if I don't, then the people who think they know you will really meet the men you are." He stared at me for a long moment, weighing the risk. Then finally, he sat back down, exhaled, and said, "You really are more dangerous outside a hospital bed." "I'm a lot of things now," I replied, turning to leave. "Thanks to you." 2 days later, the world learned that Daniel Harper was stepping down due to personal misconduct. The company released a bland statement. He signed everything, every clause, every donation, every condition. The flash drive never had to be used, but it stayed locked in my safe anyway. Because you don't fight men like him with mercy, you fight them with leverage. When I came home that night, she was waiting at the kitchen table. A single cup of tea in front of her, hands folded, eyes tired. "You did it," she said softly. I saw the news. Yeah, I answered, dropping my keys. I did. She stood up slowly, approached me. But I didn't move. I know sorry doesn't fix this, she whispered. I know what I did wasn't just a mistake, it was betrayal. I let you down, and I let myself down. I can't undo it. But I want to make it right. And how do you make something like that right? I asked, voice low. By never lying again, she said, her voice cracking. By giving you space. By letting you go if that's what you need. I looked at her for a long time. This woman I once thought I'd grow old with. This woman who shattered me to save me. There was so much pain between us, so many jagged pieces of what we used to be. But beneath it all, there was still something left. Not trust, not yet. But maybe the beginning of understanding. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. And I don't know if I ever will. But I don't hate you. Tears streamed down her face. And for once, she didn't try to stop them. I just wanted you to live, she said. And in the process, I destroyed what made life worth living. We stood in silence for a long time. Two people broken in different ways. Both of us knowing there was no clean ending to this story. No tidy bow to wrap around the truth. Only choices. I walked past her and into the bedroom. Closed the door. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because everything was fixed. But because the war was over. And the next chapter would begin in the wreckage of the last. I woke up to the sound of birds. Not cars, not her crying, not my thoughts spiraling into some kind of rage loop. Just birds. Soft, distant, as if the world outside my window had the nerve to go on like nothing happened. And maybe that was the cruelest part of it all. That life didn't stop just because mine had been cracked open. I sat up slowly. Half expecting the weight in my chest to be lighter. But no. It was still there. Sitting heavy, like a reminder that forgiveness wasn't a light switch. It was a process, and I hadn't even begun. I walked into the kitchen. She was already up, standing near the sink. Hair tied up, her back turned, hands resting on the counter like she needed it to hold her upright. Morning, I said, voice still groggy. She turned slightly, nodded. Morning. I made coffee. It was the smallest gesture. But it hit me anyway. Because she used to make it without asking. Back when mornings didn't feel like walking through emotional minefields. I poured myself a cup, sat down at the table. She hovered nearby for a moment, unsure. Then sat down too, across from me. The silence between us was thick, but not hostile, just tired. I took a sip, looked out the window. How far along are you now? I asked. Her eyes darted up to mine, surprised I even wanted to know. 17 weeks, she said softly, a little over 4 months. I nodded, swallowed hard. That's the part that broke me, you know. The timeline. Knowing I was laid up in that damn hospital bed, unaware that everything I trusted was being undone back here. I know, she whispered, her voice cracking. I replay it every night. Every single night. And do you regret it? She didn't hesitate. I regret the way it happened. I regret not telling you. I regret that I made a choice for both of us without even asking you what you would have wanted. You think I would have chosen to die? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. But I think you would have chosen us, even if it meant pain. And I didn't give you that chance. I let out a long breath. There were no villains in this part of the story. Just two people who let desperation make the worst decisions for them. Do you know what you're going to do with the baby? I asked after a while. I don't know, she said quietly. I feel like I don't deserve to raise it. I feel like he'll always be in that child's eyes. I studied her face, drawn, pale, distant. She looked like she was aging by the minute under the weight of what she carried. And for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who betrayed me, but as someone trying to survive the aftermath of her own guilt. I don't know if I can raise someone else's child, I said honestly. But I also don't know if I can walk away from it, knowing it's half yours. She swallowed a sob, turned her face away. I hate him. I hate that he lives in this house, in my body. I hate that every kick will feel like a punishment. I stood up, walked to the door. I needed air. I needed to think, not just react. The world was spinning slower now, but it was still spinning. Before I walked out, I looked back. You should talk to someone, not just me. Therapy, support, something. She nodded silently. I stepped outside, breathing in the cold spring air. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was drowning. Just floating, somewhere between rage and resolution. Later that week, I went back to the hospital. Not for tests. Not for appointments. But to see the nurse who sat with me through the worst of it. Her name was Grace, and if anyone could speak plainly to me, it was her. She met me in the small staff lounge after her shift. "Logan," she said warmly, hugging me, "look at you. Upright and everything." I smiled weakly. Feels strange to be walking around while everything inside still feels broken. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of tea. I heard about the resignation. Big headlines. Big man falls hard. You knew, didn't you? I asked. She looked down, then back at me. I suspected. I didn't know for sure. But I saw things. The way she acted around you, the way she held your hand but couldn't look you in the eye. I nodded. I'm not here for blame. I'm just trying to understand how to go forward. You don't, she said bluntly, you just start. One moment, one breath, one decision at a time. And the baby? That's not just a baby, she said, that's a consequence. A mirror. But it's also innocent. You don't owe it love, but you owe yourself peace. Whatever choice gives you that peace, that's the one you follow. I sat with that for a long time. Even after I left, her words echoed louder than the footsteps in the hallway. At home, she was in the nursery. It was just an empty room with beige walls and nothing on the floor but unopened boxes. She was sitting in the corner, legs pulled to her chest. Not crying. Just staring. I walked in slowly, sat beside her. Didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, feeling the tension swirl around us like a storm that hadn't broken yet. I picked out this room before we even tried, she said. It has the most sun in the morning. I thought it would make the baby happy. I looked around. It did have nice light. Too nice, maybe, for all the darkness living inside us now. I don't hate the child, I said finally. I just don't know if I can love it the way I'm supposed to. She looked at me, tears forming again. I would never ask you to pretend. I wouldn't want that kind of love for them. We sat there in that room for an hour, maybe two. Saying everything and nothing all at once. The truth settling around us like dust, undisturbed but permanent. And then I stood up and said, I'm going to talk to someone too. A therapist. I need help figuring this out. She blinked, surprised. Really? Yes, I said, because if I don't, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to hate you. And I don't want to live like that. She stood up too, slowly. And for a brief moment, I saw the tiniest glimmer of hope in her expression. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the possibility that we weren't completely destroyed. Just broken. And broken things, sometimes, find a way to work again. You never really know how much you've been holding in until someone asks, so how are you really doing? And when my therapist, Dr. Klein, leaned forward and asked me that in his quiet office on a rainy Tuesday, I swear something inside me cracked just a little. Because it wasn't just a polite question. It was permission. Permission to stop pretending I was just managing things when the truth was I felt like I was walking barefoot through glass every single day. I feel like I lost the version of myself that believed in things, I said, voice tight. I used to believe in loyalty, in love that could weather anything, in the idea that some people just don't betray you, but now I look at my life and I see cracks in every wall. He nodded, slow and calm, like he'd heard that same feeling from 100 other men who thought they were the only ones to feel it. And who do you blame for those cracks, Logan? He asked. I stared at the floor for a while before answering. I want to say her. I want to point at her and say, you broke me. But deep down I know part of me cracked a long time ago. Maybe when I started hiding my pain in silence. Maybe when I stopped telling her how scared I was about the surgery. Maybe when I convinced myself that if I just smiled through everything, I could protect her from reality. He scribbled something on his notepad, then looked up again. So she didn't cheat on a happy man, she cheated on a man who was already halfway gone. I swallowed hard. I'm not defending her. What she did was still betrayal. But maybe we were both drowning. She just reached for the wrong life raft. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was necessary. Like letting a wound breathe for the first time after it's been bandaged too tight. That evening, I came home to an unexpected quiet. No TV murmuring from the living room. No clinking dishes in the kitchen. Just the kind of silence that makes you feel like the walls are listening. I found her in the bedroom, holding a small framed sonogram. She didn't look up when I walked in, just whispered. He kicked today. First time I really felt it. I stood in the doorway, unsure what I was supposed to feel. Pride. Resentment. Awe. Grief. Instead, I just nodded slowly. What did it feel like? Like a bubble popping, but from the inside, she said with a weak smile. I should have felt joy, but all I felt was guilt. I walked to the window and looked out. City lights blinking like stars that had fallen too far. Guilt doesn't mean you're a monster, I said finally. It just means you're still human. She looked at me then, her eyes red but clear. I don't know what we're doing, Logan. I don't know if this is the beginning of forgiveness or just the slow part of a permanent goodbye. I turned back to her, met her gaze. I don't either. But I do know I don't hate you anymore. She gasped softly, one hand going to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. I didn't think I'd ever hear you say that. I didn't think I'd ever mean it, I said, walking closer. But I'm tired of living like every conversation is a battlefield. I want peace, even if it means we don't make it together. Her voice shook. Do you want to be part of the baby's life? I sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking carefully. I don't know how to be a father to a child that's not mine. But I also don't know how to walk away from something that's part of your heart. So maybe I start by showing up. Not as a hero. Not as a replacement. Just as me. She leaned forward, took my hand gently. And for the first time in months, her touch didn't feel like a betrayal, it felt like a question. One I didn't have to answer just yet. A week later, I met the man. My boss. Or, rather, former boss, since he'd officially stepped down amid the fallout. He asked to meet for coffee, neutral ground, and part of me wanted to slam the door in his face. But the other part, the part that was tired of wondering why, needed closure. He was already seated when I walked in, sipping something overpriced. His hair was grayer, his posture less smug than usual. He stood when he saw me, extending his hand. I didn't take it. Logan, he said carefully, thanks for coming. I'm not here to make peace, I said flatly, sitting down. I'm here for the truth. The whole truth. He nodded, exhaled like a man about to remove a splinter that had festered too long. She came to me that night, he began, told me you needed surgery and couldn't afford the rest of the costs after your insurance capped. She was crying. Desperate. And he paused, looking ashamed, I offered a deal. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was crossing a line. But I did it anyway. Why her? I asked, voice tight. You could have picked anyone. Why her? He looked me dead in the eyes. Because she loved you too much to say no. And I wanted to break something beautiful. That's the truth. No spin. No excuse. I was selfish. I thought power made me untouchable. I didn't think you'd survive the surgery. And I didn't think she'd keep the baby. I sat back, disgust and rage clashing inside me like two waves crashing into each other. You saved my life to destroy hers. He lowered his head. And in the process, I destroyed mine too. I left without another word. No threats. No revenge. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is watching someone rot in the silence they created. Alone. Weeks passed. I kept going to therapy. She started going too, separately. We didn't talk about getting back together, we talked about getting better. Healing wasn't linear, but it was happening in slow, honest steps. Then one day she handed me a note. Folded in half, written in her delicate cursive. I understand if you can't love me again. But if you can, even a little. Come with me to the doctor's appointment tomorrow. Hear the heartbeat. Look at the screen. Maybe, just maybe, you'll see more than pain. Maybe you'll see a beginning. I held that note in my hands for a long time. And in the quiet of the evening, I whispered to myself. Maybe I will. I didn't sleep much the night before the appointment. Kept waking up in waves, like my body knew something was about to shift. Not something huge, like a storm. More like the quiet rearrangement of broken pieces finally finding where they belong. I sat in the kitchen around 5 a.m., drinking black coffee and staring at the folded note she'd left me. I must have read it 20 times. Each word felt heavier than the last. I'd made peace with the facts. She'd betrayed me. My boss had used me. The child wasn't mine. But facts don't make pain disappear, they just give it a name. Still, I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Was there anything left worth saving? At 9:02 a.m., I was standing outside the clinic. I half expected her to be surprised I showed up. But when I walked in and saw her sitting there in a pale blue sweater, holding her belly and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her, she smiled like she knew I'd come. Like maybe somewhere inside her, hope had never really left. Hey, I said quietly. Hey, she replied, then blinked fast like she was trying not to cry already. You came. I said I might. You did more than that. We sat in silence for a moment. Not awkward, just gentle. Like we both understood that this wasn't about fixing anything. This was about facing what was, without flinching. They called her name, and she stood, holding out a hand not to grab me, but to offer. I took it. Maybe out of instinct. Maybe out of something deeper I hadn't let myself name yet. The room was dim and warm. There was a monitor and a soft hum from the machine. And the technician was kind, no small talk, just focus. Then came the sound. Soft at first, then steady. A heartbeat. Not hers. Not mine. His. I stared at the screen, watching the little flicker of movement that meant life. And something in me, something cold and tired, cracked. But this time, it wasn't pain that rushed in. It was clarity. That heartbeat didn't betray me. That heartbeat didn't lie or make deals or hurt anyone. That heartbeat was just a beginning. Pure. Undeniable. Real. I didn't even realize I was crying until she reached over and wiped a tear from my cheek. She didn't say anything. Didn't need to. For the first time, I saw him, not just as a consequence, but as a person. A boy who didn't ask for any of this. And yet somehow, he was the only one innocent in the whole story. We walked out slowly, neither of us speaking for a while. Until I finally broke the silence. He sounds strong. She smiled, I still watery. He is. We stopped near the parking lot, just out of earshot from anyone else. I've been thinking, I said, rubbing my palms together. This whole time, I've been stuck on what happened. Stuck on the betrayal, the pain, the shame. But what I realized in there, listening to him, is that I've been avoiding the one truth that actually matters. She looked up at me, uncertain. What truth? I exhaled slow. That I still love you. She froze, like her body wasn't sure if she heard me right. And I didn't rush to explain, didn't try to soften it with disclaimers. I just let it hang in the air between us. Because if this was going to be real, if we were ever going to climb out of the ruins, it had to start with raw truth. I don't love what you did, I continued, voice shaking. I don't love how it happened. But somewhere under all this wreckage, there's still love. And maybe that doesn't mean we go back to how things were. Maybe it means we start something new, built on honesty this time. But I do know I want to try. She covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing quietly. Logan. I never thought you'd. I didn't expect forgiveness. I nodded, eyes damp again. I didn't either. But this isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the past decide everything about the future. She stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, like a bird testing whether the wind would hold her wings again. Does this mean you want to raise him with me? And here's the part that shocked even me. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said simply. Not because I have to. Not because I'm a martyr. But because, when I heard that heartbeat, I didn't hear him. I heard us. A second chance. A new shape for love. The next few weeks weren't perfect. Forgiveness doesn't erase scars, it just teaches you how to live with them. We started therapy together. Set rules, drew boundaries, opened wounds carefully and one at a time. We talked about everything we'd avoided before. How scared I was in the hospital. How alone she felt afterward. How easy it was for us both to feel like victims in our own story without realizing we'd stopped talking to each other long before the betrayal. But slowly, brick by brick, we started building something that didn't look like what we had before. It looked stronger. More honest. Less fairy tale, more truth. And when the baby came. God, when he came. I wasn't prepared for how much I'd love him. Not out of duty, not out of pride. But out of something deeper, something sacred. Holding him in my arms, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. I didn't see the face of betrayal. I saw my son. Not biologically, no. But in every way that mattered. Months passed. The shadows of what happened never fully disappeared. But they didn't define us anymore. One night, I was feeding the baby while she slept. The room was quiet except for the soft gurgles and sighs of an infant slowly drifting off. And I looked at him, at this small, warm miracle, and whispered. You saved me too, kid. Because he did. He pulled me out of rage. He reminded me what it meant to love without needing guarantees. He taught me that sometimes, life gives you a scar in the shape of a gift. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be here, still married, raising a child that wasn't mine by blood but fully mine in heart, I would have laughed bitterly and walked away. But today I know something I didn't know back then. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a kind of quiet, relentless strength. The kind that says, I see the worst in you. And I still choose to believe there's more. And sometimes, that's all love really is.